I'll just wait for your comments. And live video, I am on live video 35. Logs. Okay. I could, while I'm waiting for people to appear, I can show you my different my different tools here. This week, since we are in confinement, I took down my piccolo cello, which is right here, up there. So I've been brushing up my small cello, and it's which is always a challenge because it is smaller, and one has to learn to play very delicately again. But it's such a pleasure to get back to the Bach's Sixth Suite. Here's my Ruggeri, which I use for everything except extremely contemporary stuff, or when I go to some unhealthy climate. Here's my modern cello by a Finnish maker, Eero Hahti, and that's very useful also. And then up there on the wall is my Baroque and classical cello, which is also great for my Bach and Beethoven and Haydn and all of that. So these are all needed for various repertoires. And then the most recent addition to all of this is this 6-string NS electric cello, which I use with my computer setup when I play with my friend John Paul Jones. So some questions are starting. Okay, let's see. How do you personally overcome days when you feel less positive about your playing? Are there any other kind of days, I wonder? Well, I just try hard. There's always a way to feel. If you wake up, you take your cello, and it's just not there anymore. And but if you just stick to something, you find. If I feel unhappy practicing one piece, I take something else. If I'm unhappy with that, I find. First of all, I look for the piece that I feel like playing that day, and if you just stick with it, there comes a moment when something moves, even just a tiny little bit, and that gives you the possibility of feeling happy with yourself, of having achieved something. It's sometimes you have to spend days, several days, and nothing happens, and then something moves, and you can't really explain why it happens, but I think it's just our own. We have to fool our own mind, and just by the the concentration, tiredness, everything contributes to it, and then suddenly the pleasure comes back. I can't really say anything else. Maria de Alba is asking how to improve sound, or how to explain to someone who is 11 years old. Oh, that's a very challenging situation. I think sound is something. I remember in one of my earlier cello talks, somebody was asking how to improve his sound, and I told then that if he feels like asking that question, he's probably already on the way to solving the problem. Because if you are unhappy about something, then you stay with it. You have to. It's finding the pleasure. An 11-year-old will know the pleasure. Will recognize the good sound when it comes, and I don't think for a young person, you can do it by giving rules or instructions. You have to find a piece that that person, that child loves and finds the pleasure practicing, and then the solution will appear itself. How does one create dexterity in the left hand while descending an arpeggio during quick tempos? These are very demanding questions. Well, being left-handed helps, of course. I'm left-handed, and so. But if you weren't born left-handed, then you'll just have to work on it. Well, I think something that I hear myself repeating at my lessons often is that everything will always remain difficult if you think of one note at a time. But if you manage to group several notes and a whole passage into a gesture, into one gesture, then suddenly you don't need to think of every individual note, and it becomes something that was very difficult a moment ago. Is suddenly it's just one gesture, and I find that solves. That's what I always try to do, and finally, I mean, if you take this to a more philosophical level, the whole piece, whole work becomes a gesture. So finally, one gesture of the Schumann concerto, you divided it into sections, and each section, when you enter it, you no longer think of it as individual difficulties. And Mike King is asking, can you talk about how to phrase big and make musical ideas obvious and communicative to the listener? Something that was, that's a very interesting subject. I was always impressed when I listened for the first time to some recordings of the American pianist Charles Rosen. He was I knew him as the writer of the classical style and sonata forms and many other books. But when I started listening to his recordings, people commented to me that he's not one to look at the details. But what impressed me was that every time I heard him start to play a piece, I immediately knew whether it was a big piece or a small piece, and I had more than with most musicians, even much more famous pianists. With him, I always had this feeling that I understand the form. He tells me something about the form that is very graspable. And for years, I had the chance to play often with him, but it's something that he didn't talk about that. But what I did learn was that he had an incredibly deep knowledge of the pieces he played, and he had a very strict, a very deep understanding of the architecture of a piece. So I started just looking at pieces and analyzing them in my own homemade way. I unfortunately I didn't go to school long enough to really have a basis of musicological analysis, but I don't think we really need that. It probably makes life easier, but what is important is that you find your own way of analyzing a piece, so that you know what is big, what are you when you see the context, when you see that, okay, I have to make this this gesture last until there, and that has to be like in one breath. Then you are on the right way, and probably the same thing I was saying, that I try to group difficulties into bigger groups, into big gestures, and I also try to group. I try to understand what the phrase is, and then what becomes a chapter, and what becomes becomes a whole section. So you by understanding and by breathing with the gestures, I think you will find that your musical ideas become much more obvious, and in fact you cannot communicate something that you haven't understood deeply yourself. So understanding is the beginning of communication. Um, let's see, there's more coming in. Right. Do I still have my electric setup? Yes, absolutely. It's right there, right there, and I work on it every day. It's very, very interesting. It's one kind of a new piece to learn to improvise with a complex system of loops and pedals and effects. But it's something that I do. I do a kind of a walk every day from my piccolo cello to my standard normal cello and to my electric cello, and I couldn't work nowadays. I've become so somehow schizophrenic that I can't just stay on one of them. I have this feeling that I need to move on. So I could never spend a whole day just going crazy with effects and pedals and loops. But then I can go to my piccolo, and I can go to my my friend's music on my normal cello. Larissa is asking, how long do you wait to form a piece after you learn it? Do you try to perform it a certain amount of times before your big performance? Well, that's it's a very good question, a very interesting question, but in a way, it's a very academic question, because you do what you can. When you learn a lot of new pieces, you have to accept the situation as it comes. I have a couple of times I've been in a situation where I've had to sight read the new piece on stage because it was finished so late that there was no time to even look at it before going on stage. But I don't want to lie, but I want to say that I've never cancelled a first performance of a piece. But I may have, but in principle, if I see a way of getting through a piece to give the audience the first taste of a new piece, I find that that's such an important moment. Not my embarrassment is not important, but the fact that a new composition is born. It's so important that I have to do it. And but ideally, of course, I try to be ready in advance. But the older I grow, the more I realize that the panic, the terror of not being ready, just gets bigger. The more experienced one is, it never gets easier. And obviously, it would be good to have run-throughs of pieces in advance, and I always recommend that to young people. But sometimes it's just simply not possible, and one has to be able to live with that risk and that, but it's also an excitement of being there in that moment. There's somebody asking, I'm just learning cello at 63 years old. I'm having a problem with my shoulder and wrist being stiff on my bow arm. Suggestions? I don't think it's very advisable for giving long distance advice, because it's such a personal technique. I would have to at least see you and walk around you to first of all to see at what stage you are in your learning of playing the cello, and what kind of physical problem there is. But in fact now in most countries nowadays there are physiotherapists who work with musicians and who can help a great deal, even if you're I don't know if you are learning yours alone or with a teacher, but I myself consult physiotherapists all the time, and we are lucky in École Normale to have somebody available once a week for the students to consult, and who comes to my class once every couple of months to go through all the students. And it's there are many things that I would not be able to solve because I don't have the physical background, but I also learn little by little to see more the details. But one thing I've learned is that no easy solutions that one can just hand out like that. Did you always feel strongly about performing contemporary works? When was the moment you knew you believed in doing this? Well, I remember very well when the first moment was. It was in February 81 in Helsinki. I had been to a concert. There was a new music festival that was just created in Helsinki, and I was studying in London at that moment, and already my teacher in London, William Pleath, was a person who kept provoking and saying that go and listen to everything new and go and listen to everything old and open your ears but I had no experience, but I heard the Bertalos Zimmermann's second cello concerto played by Siegfried Palm in Helsinki, and I was blown over by the experience. And then the next morning, my phone rang, and my ex-teacher in Finland called me and said that Siegfried Palm was giving a masterclass that afternoon, and nobody had signed in for the class. And although I wasn't no longer a student at the Sibelius Academy, but would I like to come? And I took my cello and went. I told Palm that I have nothing prepared, and he said that that's no problem, he has. So what he did was that he played me examples of his repertoire, starting from Anton Webern's Three Little Pieces and finishing with Deretsky and I can't remember. It's definitely Zimmermann and other of his composer friends. And what I got from that was that I saw how much all of this meant for him. I saw how passionate he was about this, and I saw that is something that seems to be so strong that I want to be part of that. And just about then I started working with the composers of my age, and I was lucky enough to fall with a good crowd, and that was it. It never left me. Let's see. In Set Papillon, okay, Rocio Diaz is asking about Kaija Saariaho's Set Papillon. The black marks to create a distorted sound. Do you interpret it as intercity crack sound, or could you also could also be going from, for example, a multi-sul ponticello but without the crack? Okay, now earlier on in this chat, when I was still on my own Facebook page, I spoke about this Kaija Saariaho's particular relation with overpressure, with with going deeper into the sound and finding the particles. So it's not about. You notice that in that piece, it's like always she uses it. She puts like a crescendo sign, with black crescendo sign. So you always start from a normal sound, and then you go. You add pressure until the sound starts being a mixture of noise and the note, and in the end you end up with only noise. But that noise can be many different things, because depending whether you are close to the bridge sul ponticello or in the middle or in sul tasto, and that's something that you have to experiment yourself, because again there are no there's no scientific way of controlling this. It's something that you have to, just like you have to learn how to play a fortissimo sound without breaking a big crescendo without breaking the beautiful sound. You have to learn how to gradually find the noise and find your enjoyment in that noise. So it's always a gradual thing, but it involves bow speed. The further you are, the closer you are to the bridge, the more you have to be moving with the bow all the time. Then when you are further away from, when you are in the sul tasto, far away from the bridge, you can do this with a very slow bow, very quietly. So the overpressure doesn't always mean that it's very loud. It can also, you can, if you work on your technique, you learn to do it softly and loud, and you learn to use it just like you use any other color. What is your recommendation for learning the 6-string electric cello? Well, it's tough. I tell you, it was already difficult to learn to play the 5-string cello, because there's that extra string in the middle of the bridge, which confuses you for a long time. So at the beginning you're kind of constantly confused, asking yourself, on which string am I? And adding the 6th string is even more confusing, because now you have an extra string on the top and another one at the bottom, and the added problem is that there's no body to the cello. So you don't have the normal reference of the body of the cello telling it, okay, this is the 4th position, and now I go to the thumb position. On this cello, there's just this long fingerboard, and in fact, I can't say that I've learned to play it, the 6-string cello, yet, as I know how to play normal cello or the 5-string cello. But for the time being, I use it for improvisation. So I'm not playing virtuoso tonal music. So I'm lucky. I get away with my incompetence a little bit. But I'm sure one day with the it's possible to learn. Juan Sebastian Delgado is asking, hi Anssi Karttunen, I'm interested. Oops, this is one. I see the name Davidovsky there. For the composer, with the moment, unfortunately, the composer passed away so can't play it for me, and there's very little. So, like with any other piece, well, in fact, I'm not. I'm going to look at this. Yeah, Davidovsky's Synchronism, which is a very very important, historically important piece. I remember I played it when it has a tape part, and those days tape parts you started the tape, and then you just had to go with it, and it was extremely difficult to learn and to practice, because every time I made a mistake, I'd have to rewind the tape and go to the beginning of the piece and play the whole thing again. Now it's been digitalized, and and I got the file. It's been cut into smaller sections so that you could probably trigger it yourself, these individual passages with a pedal, and therefore it's now much easier to practice. But unfortunately, there are no that I know. I can't remember. There must be some recording of it, but I haven't. It's not been recorded much. So it's the best thing is to find somebody who knew him, who played with it. The name that comes to my mind is Fred Sherry, who gave me the files of the digitalized version. Kagel's secret. These we often come in this repertoire to the realization that as much as people have developed the notation over the years, you still have to realize that we live in a mixture of written and oral tradition, and we have to try, and as long as we can, we have to find people who worked with the composers and who have the first-hand knowledge, and if possible, several of those people, because everybody's memory, my memory, is very not trustworthy at all, in the sense that we all remember what we want to remember, the kind of things that we like to remember, and we tend to forget things that didn't seem problematic to ourselves. So it's always important to find the person, if possible, the person who worked with the composer. Lauren, hi Lauren. Can you talk about some of your relations with composers, and how knowing a composer helps inform the way you approach the pieces? Well, knowing that there's nothing that can nothing more important than knowing the person, and nothing that can replace that knowledge. And then if you can't meet the person anymore, just like I said to Juan, you need to find people who did know that person, and just every little anecdote, every little snippet of information is important. It's just like it just knowing what a person, how a composer reacts to meeting you, already tells something, and obviously nothing can replace for me the fact of having known Dutilleux for over 30 years, but at the same time, I knew him as a person and as a composer who always approved. He seemed to approve of my attempts to play his pieces, and therefore I have very little in the way of instructions how to play his music, because to most of my questions would he agree that I play this way his piece, he usually said yes, but that's useful for me, because it gives me the the feeling that I'm on the right track, but it's now I have to just trust that my instinct is trustworthy, but I can't tell you what he wouldn't have uh, um, accepted. So it's not always easy, but it gives when I'm playing the music of Magnus Lindberg or Kaija Saariaho, is the closest when I'm on stage with their music. It is the closest I can get to absolute security of the feeling that the music doesn't need to be written by me, but I know these friends so well that I don't need to be afraid that am I wrong when I change something a little bit, and even if I'm wrong, it's still within a certain context acceptable. Um, so I would like as to have this possibility of knowing composers. Um, let's go move on. So now, any tips on how to stay in the moment during a performance while nervousness takes over? Is there a way of prepare for this in the practice room before going on stage? Well, nervousness is a very personal. We all get nervous in a slightly different way, but it's if you are able to move further from the technical knowledge of the piece of that you are actually you feel that when you are on stage you are thinking of musical challenges rather than technical challenges, then you are less likely to be affected by nervousness. If you are there and you are thinking of the next difficult passage, and then if you mess it up or if you play it perfectly, you immediately start thinking of the following difficult passage, you are actually just in a survival mode until the end. But if you are there and if you are asking the question that am I doing justice to the music? Do I find the gesture? Am I passing the message properly? Then you are asking yourself questions that don't deal with the nerves. It deals with your knowledge of the piece. So I I recommend trying to move further from the being afraid of technical problems. Then Alonso Lopez Romo is asking, would you give your thoughts about signal processing and texturizing? Oops, that's the doorbell ringing. Texturizing produced by cello at first. I'm afraid this is a subject that I think we would need to have a conversation about this. Yes, I think I deal with this problem a lot when I play my electric cello with my Kima processor, and I'm struggling. Well, one general problem is that when you are using an electric cello, the electric input of the cello, which has no resonating body, the sound is always, after a while, unsatisfactory. However you treat it, however you filter it, you never have the same feeling of vocabulary of colors that you can do immediately on a cello with a resonating body. So that's why where we come to looking for effects, and it's an endless world to get into that. That's why I don't think I can cover it in a couple of minutes. But one of my biggest problems in this is that I think we still don't have a solution of having the same kind of feeling of control over your own playing with the electronic instrument. And it's maybe my own problem, because I just find it difficult to let go of that. Maybe I need to change. Maybe it's not the instrument that needs to change. So we've already gone past the club, which was a little hitch at the beginning. Maybe I should go on a couple of more minutes. I'm looking back to the earlier questions. There's an early question from a live audience. What aspect of cello technique do you think are important to practice every day? The number of exercises out there is so overwhelming. Well, I've never been a great fan of exercises, studies, and I see the importance of them. But what I try to do is that I try to use any piece as an exercise. So I get so easily bored by just doing technical exercises that I take very often in the morning after I've warmed myself up. I do like to warm myself up with some scales and just something slow. But after that, I go to my cupboard and I just rummage around the music until I find something that I feel like taking out and playing and using that as an exercise, not just to maybe to play through, but also to find passages and just stick with one thing and make that one thing better. I don't think my relation to technique is not methodical. I'm very jealous of people who had a very methodical relation. People like Starker and Navarra and Tortelli and many others who probably were able to play any piece from their repertoire at a moment's notice because of this. But I find that I move in such a vast scale of different styles and techniques that I need to just keep myself somehow fresh with whatever there is, and that's why I just take out pieces. I use everything as an exercise, and it's very important to be able to sight read, to be able to play through, to be able to play badly. But it's also very important to decide, now I stop. I will just play the theme of the Rococo variations until I've covered it and until I've fixed every little problem in it. And that you can spend a whole day with that, even if you are never going to perform that piece, but it's always a useful time well spent. And you can do because you are working with a piece of music, so you are never only working with technique. I already spoke about not being positive. Anything new? I think I've covered most of the questions that I see here. So maybe next time we talk about something else, and maybe next time I manage the Facebook a little bit better. So like we do in Finland, the most famous Finnish sentence is "thank you and I'm sorry." So see you very soon again.